Welcome to our Ocean Steward Spotlight series, where we highlight ocean stewards from diverse backgrounds, connecting ocean lovers with stories that inspire them. I'm Sarah Papanicolaou, campaign organizer with Oceana in Washington State, joining you tonight from the traditional lands of the Duwamish and Snohomish peoples. I have the privilege of talking with David Riera this evening. David is a Florida International University PhD candidate, a U.S. Marines veteran, and a South Floridian, making it his lifelong mission to educate and connect people to oceans and parks. He is a McKnight Fellow, a member of the board of the Society of Wetland Scientists, a national officer for minorities in agriculture, natural resources, and related sciences, as well as an ambassador for the National Parks Conservation Association, and recognized as one of NPCA's top 10 under 40. Welcome, David.
Hey, how are you? How's everybody? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Looking forward to talking with you tonight. So before we dive into some of your conservation work, we want to recognize that National Hispanic Heritage Month just ended. With that said, might you tell us a little bit about your roots and how this has informed your love for the oceans?
Of course, that's big. I wanted to start by also giving pause. As a Floridian, as a Miamian, I take a moment to say that we're on Tequesta, Seminole, and Miccosukee lands as well. So I hold that in high respect and high regards. I could tell you that my background, I'm sort of a mutt. From my mom's side, I'm Cuban and African, and from my dad's side, I'm a Siberian and Spaniard. So I'm a little bit of everything. I'm a minority within a minority. Sometimes people call me a quattroon. So when it comes to the intersection of my love for the ocean, my mom's dad came over to Cuba, was brought over to Cuba as a slave out of a port of Morocco. So that transition is very powerful in how I identify in my culture. And I didn't get a chance to really have grandparents. So my parents were able to give me godparents. And my godfather, having very little school, coming to this country as an immigrant, he was a boat carpenter. So when I was in, when I was middle school, high school age, and I was actually going to school, he was actually learning a trade. And, that's a trade that paved his way to get over here to here. So adopting my background as somebody that comes from, the islands, it's very powerful to know that we're here on a peninsula surrounded by water. I always make the connection scientifically and metaphorically that we're, 70% water, more or less. Our hearts and our brains are actually the organs that hold the most water. And, think about it. We're a little bit about 80% covered in oceans and waters on this planet. So there's a strong connection on a molecular level and on a spiritual level to water, so it goes through us.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's an incredible story. Your family and connection to the water. So a little bit more about you. Did you have a big defining moment when you fell in love with the ocean?
And thinking about that, I think I'm falling in love with the ocean in reverse. My ties to the ocean ever since I was a kid. My godfather would take me to the beach. My godparents would take me to the beach. Back when it was cool to own an apartment in the early 80s in Miami Beach. Took me to the beach. They taught me how to swim. My dad took me to the Everglades to fish. My dad was the type of person that would teach you to swim by throwing you in the deep end. So I got a lot of rigor when it came to swimming. When I was in high school, National Skip Days would find me and a group of my friends bus hopping as rebels to get to the beach. It was about 4 different buses we had to take from the inner city to get to Miami Beach, but it was a great time. And then in the Marine Corps, you know, you can't be a Marine if you don't know how to swim, right? Because if you have to jump off of a ship or you have to get there, I got really trained up. It's hard, right? The work that I do now for my students, the research that I've done, that I continue to do, the wonderful people that I have the privilege to work with, both nationally, internationally, and locally, all champions. So it's almost like dancing in the rain. Every raindrop, every experience that has brought me to this point, including this point, is the defining moment, because each one of those droplets informs and really makes me feel in love with the ocean every day.
That's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I'd like to invite in a few of your colleagues now from the Hispanic Access Foundation, Adriana Dowell and Ashley Suarez Burgos, to join us. Adriana holds a bachelor's in communication and marketing from San Diego State University, as well as a Master of Arts in Maritime Archaeology from East Carolina University. Her research interests in maritime archaeology include gender roles and feminist theory and maritime culture, as well as public outreach and education efforts with an emphasis on innovative interpretive methods and climate change preservation. Ashley Suarez Burgos was born and raised in Miami, and at a young age, she discovered her passion for conservation-focused digital storytelling. Combining her background of professional salmon fishing and filmmaking, she's discovered outlets for creative eco-storytelling by creating authentic conversations, events, and marketing strategies for diverse communities. Welcome to you both. Thanks for joining today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so you've been appointed to the Hispanic Access Foundation's Ocean Advisory Committee. Can you tell us more about the work that you're doing there?
Ashley, you want to take it away?
Yeah, absolutely. So together we've been working on a lot of policy advisory work in regards to the states that we live in. I know David and I earlier this year were emailing and calling a bunch and just helping in regards to specific policies in our waterways. Yeah, and also just helping out plan events, especially for Latino Conservation Week, and how we can get more of our community outdoors and active into helping protect our waters.
Fantastic. Anything you'd like to add, David and Adriana?
Yeah, I will say, like, you know, the team came up with, as Lee mentioned, we came up with innovative ways. COVID really disconnected, and I think that there was this huge fight, and the coast and the narrative of the beach became kind of, you know, you see the videos of spring breakers coming to the beach and all that, and then we hear the news of the fact that COVID has really improved nature, right? Because people weren't going through there and people weren't going to our beaches, so there was less traffic. So, you know, the team came up with a way, you know, to really bring nature into the home. And this, you know, for our team, we came up with Nature in a Box, and it was a 1 week, you know, throughout, you know, Latino Conservation Week. It was an entire week full of family fun in a box. You know, we live in that time where subscription boxes are huge. Well, we were able to do Nature in a Box, and me and Ashley and one of our other colleagues, Virginia, that had a beautiful baby, we were able to bring nature, and that was pretty big. That was pretty big, connecting, and it was huge.
Piggybacking off of what David just said, I mean, I think it was really, really neat to see them become so innovative in the way that they approached Latino Conservation Week this year. I unfortunately was not down there to help assist. However, you know, we and some of our members in other parts of the US were able to assist in our own way by contacting local state legislators and advocating for some of the legislation that we were working on getting passed. And it was really neat to see how, you know, a group of us who are just saying, hey, look, this is really important and this is why you need to support this. And then finally watching it get passed was, it was really incredible, and it felt really very rewarding.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Incredible work that you're doing, and so good to hear a little bit more about it. So I have a question that I'd like to ask for our viewers. So what would you say to people who love the ocean but may not know what steps that they can take to protect it?
I will say my biggest recommendation is research. And that can be as simple as typing into Google, how do I help the ocean? How do I get involved in conservation efforts? I think that's the first step. If you don't understand why it needs conserving, you're not going to be an effective advocate for it. So I always say research. Go to organizations that you know have this kind of reputation for transparency and having the most up-to-date policies and recommendations and research and science backing it. NOAA, Oceana, you know, there's plenty of them out there, the National Park Service. So you really just have to Google. Yeah.
David and Ashley?
Oh yeah, I'd say that there's probably things already that a lot of people are doing and don't realize that it's helping. So examples like recycling a lot of containers, which is like super big, at least here in Miami Latino culture. Like we reuse like cracker cans and butter tubs for everything. You know, just as simple as if you're walking outside and you see trash on the ground, pick it up. Like that's the simplest thing you can start with. And just reusing products. And as well, I would say knowing what products you're buying and how that affects as well. So really doing research, maybe like what seasonal seafood to buy, what companies to support that from, and you know where that money is going towards, because that really is like the second biggest thing in regards next to like voting on how you can impact.
Piggybacking off of those two great points, all I could say is get connected, right? You know, you have to find your connection. Whether that connection is in advocacy, whether that connection is in research, whether that connection is reduce, reuse, and recycle in your own home and getting your family to jump on that. Let me tell you something. In a Hispanic home, even though we multi-purpose everything, getting them to understand even the numbers on the bottom, what types of plastics can go where. You know, when I was in high school, we had something called a purpose, which was like a 7th period, and it was, you know, trying to tackle civic engagement. I have a high school student right now, Girl Scout, you know, she is doing great things with pollinators, and she actually also participated in the Latino Conservation Week. So, you know, make your connection and make it known. You know, that's all I could say.
Yeah,
any little thing helps. Any little thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's great to keep in mind. Well, thank you for sharing great opportunities to get involved. So since we have sort of two major audiences, one who are people who might just be getting into their conservation values, and then those who are already years into their professions, I'd like to ask, what's your vision for the ocean conservation community?
I'd say for at least on the professional level, I always want to see more diversity and just more inclusivity and equality in regards. So my challenge, I would say, would be to really question and kind of re-evaluate best work practices and how that kind of affects the hiring process into bringing more communities that haven't necessarily had that same opportunity to be in those conservation focused professions.
I could say, just like what Steve was saying, intersectionality and interculturalism, right? On a universal scope, right? And not from the colonist standpoint, more from the you tell us. You know, we're here, experts, advocates, educators, researchers. We're here to provide those things, but you know, what we want is a complicated discussion, and people just need to move away from themselves or get out of their own ways to do the work, right? It's important to be intentional and not consequential, right? So I don't want, this future to kind of be something that was an afterthought, that, oh, here's something happened, something broke on your car, now let's fix it. Let's look at preventative measures and be intentional about it. I'm very intentional in the classroom. I'm very intentional in the office. I'm very intentional in my own backyard when I talk to homeless people that walk next to my patio, talking to me about my plants. I'm very intentional on making sure that people have, like what Ashley said, best practices. I'm living it. I'm practicing it, right?
Absolutely. Andriana, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, my two colleagues have amazing points. I especially like the intentionality of, and in anything that we do with ocean conservation. I think what I have to contribute is I really hope that this becomes less of a grassroots movement, at least, in the way that it's perceived, to more of a given. And I know that that's the case for a lot of movements and issues going on right now. And I hope to also see not only intersectionality with this movement and with this conservation effort, but also cross-disciplinary and multidisciplinary action. And I can speak to that as, as you've explained, I'm an archaeologist. You probably right off the bat wouldn't imagine why would that be important with ocean conservation, but there's a lot of different disciplines out there that we can all benefit to working together and sharing our research. And I think that that's going to be the future for this.
That's a really, really good point. So I'm curious what each of you see is the most concerning threat at this moment in time to our oceans. If you can't settle on just one, it's okay. If there's more than one that really stands out to you.
I'm gonna say, based on like where David and I live, sea level rise and due to climate change, because our home's not gonna be here real soon, and we're gonna have to figure where to go next. That one's like everyday issue, especially here. Like we're always hearing about how like South Beach, Brickell, the Grove is all flooding because like the pipe systems are wrong and they're not prepping for what's about to happen in the next 50 years. It's scary.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge.
I'm always going to go with the huge threat is us. There's a quote that's always very prolific in my head, with this idea that evil, whatever you deem evil, wins when good people do nothing, right? And I think that that's a two-part project. People from minority backgrounds don't or have never been given permission to do the work, and being invited into these spaces. And I think now in 2020, they're not asking for permission anymore. They're making their niches, carving them out when they can. I'm very humbled to work with these ladies and being able to be a voice for our communities, be a voice for people that look like us, come from our backgrounds, come from our neighborhoods, our barrios. Hablamos como nosotros, that kind of thing. Language is a barrier, but language is also power. So by not doing the work, not knowing that you, the viewer, you're powerful and that you need to just do the work, that's the main thing. It's bigger than any natural happening, any anthropocentric happening. Those are huge and it's very researched, but we're each individual fingers, but when we come together, we make a fist.
It's hard to piggyback off of that one. Thanks, Dave. Again, coming from an archaeologist standpoint, global warming and ocean water temperatures, that is so detrimental to the health and sustainability of our submerged cultural sites. Who knows how long it's going to take now, seeing the acceleration rate of those temperatures for our sites to be broken down. And we're never going to get those back. and it's very difficult to preserve those sites. So that's where these things come in. That's where we have that intersection, and it's really scary because this is it. And like David just said, you know, it's us. We have to do something. We're both the enemy and the solution.
Absolutely. Really, really well put, Andriana. So I have one more question, and this one is a bit more lighthearted than the last. What is your favorite sea creature?
Salmon. I love salmon. I'm
Me too.
obsessed with salmon. It's the reason why my career is what it is now.
Amazing.
I will say, you know, I don't have a favorite, right? So I kind of practice for when I have more than one kid. But realistically speaking, the one that stands out to me always in my mind is a Portuguese man-o-war. Why? Because on one of these national skip days, you know, I had a Portuguese man-o-war wrapped around my arm. And, you know, I was doing what my godfather did, right? You know, he would go to the edge of the beach wearing those little swim goggles, and he would swim to the reef, you know, no tank, no nothing. And on that skip day, I tried to do the same, and a friend of mine came with me, and I started seeing what looked like a bag in the water over the waves. And I looked and I was like, that doesn't look right. And I started like swimming, running. I hit a sandbar. He's like, where are you going? I'm throwing him in front of me. And then what I didn't know was the Portuguese man-o-war's tendrils were already, you know, passed in front of me. So they started just like wrapping around. And when I finally got like that impulse of adrenaline over, they all were like, their mouths like, all my friends going like that. And they're like, what is that? And I just didn't notice. They took me to the lifeguard tower, and the lifeguard, which I swear I thought was from, you know, stereotypical like Baywatch, he was like, dude, that's a Portuguese man-o-war. It was my arm was just glowing in venom. So Portuguese man-o-war, hands down right now.
Wow, that's quite a story, David. Andriana, do you have a favorite, or is it hard to pick out just one?
It's definitely hard to pick out. I think my favorite would be a whale shark. I've actually never seen one in the ocean, but it's always been, Ashley, you have something to input with that? Well, I've always wanted to dive with one. That's been a huge goal of mine. I had friends who did, and it just looks like the coolest experience. So one day I will make that happen.
I'll keep my fingers crossed for you. That does sound like an incredible experience. Well, there's definitely so much more time we could fill speaking together, but our time is coming to a close, and we wanted to make sure that people can find out more about you and your work. So we'll put up some information in just a second about that. But before we do sign off, do you have any parting words for folks that are watching?
Do what you can and educate yourself. We can all make a difference, no matter how small. That's always been my thing. Like Ashley had stated before, pick up your trash, educate yourself on the products that you're buying, and just learn what you can do in your local area. It starts at home.
Absolutely. David or Ashley, anything else you want to add?
I'd say like be that friend to show around if you have that experience, or if not, find someone. Like I'm always the person people call to be like, oh, I've never gone kayaking, or I want to go out in the ocean, I want to go fishing. So do that. That's the best way to introduce people out to the outdoors and to conservation.
I love that. Great point.
I will say what Roosevelt said, do what you can where you're at with what you have. You know, that's all anyone could ever ask. And, you know, at that plays in my head as a Rough Rider and as somebody that was, you know, a champion for parks and spaces. That's what we have, right? Do what you can where you're at with what you have. And I really appreciate, and I'm humbled by what I have. You know, spirituality is just derived connections.
Mm. Well, thank you. That's wonderful. I'm going to share the URL for Hispanic Access Foundation here. And I'd like to thank each of you so much for joining today for this conversation. It's really been a pleasure, and I encourage folks to check out some of the work you're doing. Incredible work. Thank you so much. And I hope that folks will join us for our next Ocean Steward Spotlight, which is coming up November 19th. We'll have a conversation with Queen Quet, who is an author and founder of the premier advocacy organization for the continuation of the Gullah Geechee culture, the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition. So please do join us November 19th. And thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your evening, and stay safe out there.